Hello there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, if you're new here, hello, and I'm a stay-at-home mum who sits in my conservatory and makes really pretty things. Well, I think they're pretty. We call it faffing here on this channel, so if you like messing about with wire and beads and other sorts of media, you're very, very welcome here. I'm trying to hold on to the last vestiges of summer, so I'm all about colour and flower and floral things at the moment, and I thought we would have a look at these. As you can see from this little bit of video of me in my garden, I am desperately trying to brave the wind and hold on to summery things. So I'm wearing lots of colour, so I thought we'd have a look at these. Aren't they pretty? So I've been making these in lots of different colours and obviously different metals, different materials, and these ones are in copper. The only thing that you need is a little bit of wire, some 11/0 seed beads, and your little few little tools. Aren't they gorgeous? So we're going to be making these today. You can put as many petals as you like on. I did try putting lots on. Not sure I quite like the top part of it. I need to work out how to sort that out, but I stumbled across this beautiful little red flower. So let's go ahead and make some of these, shall we? And we are back, my lovelies, so let's see what we need to make these cute little earrings. So all you're going to need is some 1mm, that's 18 gauge bare copper wire, or as I'm using here today, silver plated wire, just whatever wire you like. Actually, I suppose you could use anything you wanted to with these beauties. Like I've said, I've made mine with copper and all sorts of different, different styles, different sizes, different amounts of petals, that kind of thing. So versatile. You're going to need that. You're also going to need 26 gauge. Again, I'm going to be using silver plated copper wire. These are in soft, by the way, guys. I know some of you do ask me. You're going to need an ear wire for each of your earrings. I make my own from 0.8, that's 20 gauge copper wire, or indeed whatever silver wire, whatever takes your fancy. What else do we need? You're going to need some beads, obviously. If you're anything like me and you have a plethora of little seed beads that you don't know what to do with them, which is me all the time. I buy them and I'm like, oh, what can I do with them? So you're going to need some 11/0 seed beads. What else are you going to need? You will need, obviously, some cutters. I'm using my 6-step bell making pliers to make the loops here and here. Mine are 2 to 9mm increments, in case you wanted to know. You're going to need your favourite chain nose pliers and maybe a pair of round nose, because just at the end we just do this to make sure the petals are all nice and full and, fat, so to speak, a bit like me, full and fat. That's a beautiful thing to be. Okay, so let's get going and we'll make this one beautiful. I'll see you in a few. Okie dokie, so let's bring in our measuring device. A rule, as it's known as, or a ruler. Doesn't matter, does it really? It depends on you. I'm going to say ruler just because. Now then, where's my wire? There it is. You're going to need for each earring approximately, I'm going to say, I use centimetres, about 8 centimetres. What's that? About 3¼ inches. Something along those kind of lines. So obviously you're going to need 2 lengths of that, of your 1mm. You could use 1.25 16 gauge, I think, if you wanted the centre core to be a little thicker. But 1mm and 0.4mm are what we sort of generally have in our stash, I think. Certainly if you're a beginner, which my tutorials are basically aimed towards the beginner, because I'm pretty much a beginner too, so I'm just sharing with you. So you just take your wire. Now then, I'm hoping that my camera does its thing and focuses the way it should be, but I'll soon find out, won't I? So about, I don't know, 1/3 of the way along, just bend around the largest mandrel on your plier, the longest bit over the top of the shortest bit, so you get this kind of shape. It's kind of almost like a circle, but earring into the pear shape a little bit there. So this is what we have. And then the shortest wire here, you just bring in your plier just where they meet and just put an angle in it like so. This is what we're looking for. Oh, the sun's come out. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And then what we do, take a flat plier, and I use these an awful lot, but if you have like a flat nose, and don't worry too much about marring these parts of the wire here, because we are going to be covering those with, just have to close my blind actually, wait a second. There we go. Seems like a shame to close that off, but can't see very well, can we? Anyway, so we are going to be covering these parts of the wire with, you know, when we're going to be wire wrapping around it, so don't worry too much. Hold here and wind this tightly around just a couple of times, not too much, so you end up with this sort of shape. All right, there we go. So just snip off this end. I do mine on an angle usually, and then I come in with my plier and just smush, squish that nicely down so that we have this shape here. All right, so do 2 of those so that we have matching. All right, so bring in your beads, which I will turf a few of these out on here and hopefully they won't go everywhere. There we go. Too many, but never mind. Not to worry. And then bring in your 0.4 26 gauge. Now I'm going to suggest you take, now obviously if you're only putting 6 petals on your earring, then you're going to need slightly less wire. I'm going to be doing 7 to match this one, so you can have 4, 5, 6, 7. You could possibly fit 8 in if you wanted to, like this one. Wasn't quite happy with the way that that looked because it just looked a bit odd at the top, so maybe I'll come up with a way to cover that section at the top. But you know, just use, for the 7, I'd say probably 40 centimeters, something like that. Yeah, 40-45 centimeters, give or take. You know me, give or take is the order of the day. 40-45 centimeters, something like that. Right, so on this one, I've wire wrapped 10 wraps at the top here. All right, so just shift these out of the way so we focus. So you've got a back side and a front side. All right, so this is the front side, that's the back side. So on the front side, pop your wire over the top. I'm going to use my pliers because of my silly fingers. They don't have as much power in them as they used to, thanks arthritis. So you're going to need to do 10 wraps. Okay, so 1, 2, and that's 3, and then pop it up the top, hold that little tail out of the way, and then just wind your wire through so that you have 10 wraps. Nice and tight up to the top. Smush things along with your fingernail if you have to. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. All the time just making sure that you don't kink your wire, because this 0.4 wire can snap if you're not careful, certainly if you're sort of manipulating it quite a bit, which you do when you're wrapping. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Through for 8. Just 2 more. Talk amongst yourselves. That's 9, and then a final one is 10. Now you will be replicating that obviously on the other side, so make sure everything's all squished up and keep this little tail out of the way for now. Right, so here we're ready to start putting our beads on. Now I've worked out that to get this kind of pretty size here, it takes 12 seed beads, and these are 11 O's, yeah? So, sorry, 12, yeah, 12 11 O's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Okay, so you bring these right down to your piece. Now they should be underneath, obviously. This wire is coming from underneath. Now the trick to doing this, there isn't a trick. You just have to bend your wire around as best you can. It sorts itself out in the end, so don't worry. If it sort of goes all squished up in this sort of shape rather than this shape, don't worry about it. We can sort that out later. So pop your beads down. Now this is going to be difficult to show you with my fat fingers, but you want to see if you can try and get this bottom bead sitting on the frame and this last bead here again sitting on the frame but on top, if you will, so that the wire is on the top of the frame, not underneath. Can you see that? And then either wind it through this way, which is difficult with a longer piece because you do kink your wire a little bit, and then tightly come over. So you want 2 wraps in between each of the petals, so you can feed it through that way if you wanted to, which often I think is easier, and then back through again. So in between each petal you want 2 wraps, like so. Right, so that's our first one. So let's do another. So 12 beads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think when I do videos like this I might learn to speak different languages in order to count, and then I can count to 12 or 10 or whatever in various languages. Suggest a language down below in the description box and I'll see if I can learn to count in that language. Don't say Japanese, please, as much as I love everything Japanese. Okay, so again, we've got our little beads here. So literally bend the wire around as best you can, but keeping these beads nice and tight and taut. We don't really want to see any spaces in between. I mean, you're going to get a little bit of space in between sometimes. Okay, so the wire should be over the top of the frame again. Keep everything nice and tight. And then if you want to do it this way, push your wire through and then tightly catch it over the top, and that'll lock this into place like so. But don't fret at this stage, because don't forget we're going to be tidying these up later on. Okay, so that's 1 wrap, back through for 2 wraps, then we have our 2 wraps in between. No we don't, we've got 1 in between. Do another one, Sammy. There we go, 2 wraps in between, keeping everything like so. Can you see how the beads are just touching the wire frame here, the 1mm frame? All right, I'll just do one more, and then, because you don't really want to see me counting. Now, can I remember my Spanish? Possibly not. There's probably lots of Spanish people out there that are going, no, don't count in Spanish because I will get it wrong. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 2 more, 11 and 12. There we go. Oops, 12. That one went flying. So let's have 12 on. I will just count those just to be sure. 4, 6, yeah, 12. All right. So here we go again. Bend around like so, keeping everything nice and tight, keeping the bead just on the side of the frame. I hope that's coming over on the camera. Pop your wire through however you want to do it and however is easiest for you, and then tightly catch it. Okay, so can you see? Moves around at the moment, but that's fine, don't worry. And then you want 2 wraps in between. That's 1, and then that's 2. All right, so at this stage, again, like I say, don't worry about these all looking a bit funky. It doesn't matter at this particular juncture, not a problem. So I'll meet you back when you've done that 7 times and we've got 7 petals on. Okay, so I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, my friends, we're back. Let's just do this last one, shall we? And then we'll have a look at how to just finish off the earring. So I'm just going to do the boring talk amongst yourselves. Counting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and oops, 12. So we can get rid of those now. So 12 beads on. Okay, so as you can see here, we're just moving things around a little bit so that we can fit everything in. Squash things along a little bit. No problem at all. And again, bend your wire around so that it sits, this last bead sits just on the edge of your wire frame. Pop your wire through and just nice and tightly wrap that around just to lock everything in place. So here we have our little petals on. And what we want to do now is to replicate what's on this side and do 10 wraps. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off that because it's easier to work with. So how long is that, Sammy? That's 10. Yeah, I think you probably get away with 35 centimeters, to be fair. Don't want to be wasting wire if we don't have to. So how many is that? 1, 2, and then just wind this round 10 times. So that's 3, 4. This is a fun part, a nice sort of relaxing part. That's 5. Obviously, you know, fast forward this bit if you want to, because it's just literally me finishing this off. 6, and 7. Obviously, if you don't fast forward and watch, then the longer you watch, the better it is for my channel. So don't click off if you don't fancy clicking off. Just listen to me rambling along. Apparently it's better for your channel if people don't switch off, so that's good. So how many have we got there? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Super. So squish those up like so. And this is what we have. Yeah, look, the petals look a little bit funky right now. Don't worry about that. So chop off your ends here and here, like so. Obviously get rid of your little bits and pieces, and then you just want to come in and just squish those down, give them a good squeeze so that, you know, so that they don't go anywhere and everything's nice and secure. Squish. So what you want to do then is squish these up, these 10 wraps, squish them up so that they hit, you know, at the top of the frame. And this is what we're left with. All right, so we've got our petals. At the moment, I'm not going to bother, you know, doing this and sort of messing around and setting them just quite yet, because we've got a little bit to do yet. All right, so come in with your pliers. Bend this wire here, like so, on a bit of an angle. And then I like to measure it 1 centimetre because I know that my pliers on this part of my plier here. That's about 1 centimetre. Oops, about 1 centimetre on the second step of my plier. So I come round, and because I've done that in front of the camera, it's not worked very well, but that's okay. You get the gist. You get the gist, and just make your loop at the top like I've done there. There we are. So there is our little earring with our, see if I can come in a bit better there, Sammy, because I am almost not blind so much as, but my eyesight is just appalling. So sometimes, there we go. So you just make your loop at the top. I'm getting old, my friends, that's what it is. So we have our little flower. So let's make our little bar here. I mean, you don't have to put one of these little bars on if you don't want to. You can literally just put your ear wire straight on. Where did I put my little ear wire? No, I'll have to make one, never mind. So you can put your bar on or not, as the case may be. I'm choosing to do that. So come in again with your 1mm wire. I'll just quickly show you how to, how I make these. Flush cut the end, then come in and measure 3 centimetres, or about just, one and, what's that? Just short of 1 1/4 inches, for those of you who like to use inches. I use the first step on my plier and bend around like so, make a little shape like that, and then at a 90-degree angle, because when we're hanging this off here, we need one of these loops to sit upwards and one of them to sit flat ways. All right, so at a 90-degree angle like so, do another loop, thus. So we have this, you see that? Alrighty, so now what we want to do is just straighten that slightly. That's fine. So then you need to come in with a little bit of your wire. So because we're winding it round, it takes a little bit more than you think it does actually. So take about, I don't know, 12, I'm going to 14 centimetres, something along that kind of line. And then all you do is wrap, 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 wrappity wrap. Have everything nice and tight and secure. Made these before on my channel actually. I think if you look into the past, go back into the realms of time, I will have made some of these on a different video. So you just literally wind around and wind around. So I think that might be too much wire. About 10 centimetres probably would do you, but I like to have a little bit more to play with, if you know what I mean. Just a little bit more than you need, and then it gives you plenty of scope, doesn't it? You don't run out. There's nothing worse than running out of wire when you're in the middle of something. There we are. Right, so I'm going to just chop that bit off, and I'm going to chop this little end here, like so. Oops, let's get rid of these little bits. And like with anything, you just come in and squeeze a little bit like that, just to make sure that everything's nice and secure. There we are. Right, so there's our little piece here. Now then, I have not got a silver ear wire, so bear with me for a second. And as usual, I am really disorganized, and I'm now back with my ear wire. There we go. So let's pop this on like so. So we pop one end onto our beautiful little flower. If you want to call it a flower, I suppose it looks a bit like a flower. I like it. Yeah, let's call it a flower. And then pop our ear wire on like so. So there we are. So because it is at 90 degrees, we made these 2 loops at 90 degrees, it all sits nicely. And there is our little second flower. So all you need to do now is to come in with your little round nose and give these little petals a little going over, like so. And you'll find that if they want to sort of sit slightly on top of each other, that's also fine. It adds to the texture a little bit. You can move them around slightly if you want to, just to give them a little bit more texture rather than having them all flat. That's absolutely fine. Like that. And there we have, my friends, a beautiful, well, I think they're beautiful, little pair of summer. Let's just hold on to the last parts of summer, shall we? The little vestiges of summer. So like I say, you can make these in copper with all sorts of different beads, different materials, different wires, different colours, different amount of petals around. They're so versatile. Hope you enjoy making these. Let me know in the comments how you get along, and it's a delight to have you here, as always, when you're joining me literally in my conservatory in the northwest of England. Faffing around, let's have a faff. Let's make it a faffy week. Enjoy making. Bye guys.